part 2 to Ichika guitar tone. Make sure to watch to the end where I show how you can get his more crunchy tone. First, for the hardware signal chain, Ichika uses a discrete 4 interface from Antelope Audio. It's a very high quality interface, and the preamps are really transparent sounding, which works really well for Ichika's tones because we want to set the preamp gain as high as we can without the signal clipping during performance. For this tone, using a Telecaster plugged into an Apollo Twin, I had my preamp gain set to 30 decibels. On a clean tone with no amplifier, the first thing that Ichika will use is a tape emulator. And that's so it sounds less digital and more natural and analog sounding. And the most important settings, if you have these options available on your tape emulator, are 15 IPS, the IEC or CCIR EQ, and whatever tape type has the widest frequency response, which you can look up in the manual of whatever plugin you're using. The next thing that Ichika uses is a FET compressor, so anything like an 1176. Specifically, Ichika uses an 1178 simulation to reduce the overall dynamics of his playing, so even the quiet tapping parts can still be audible. And he gets to about 5 to 7 decibels of gain reduction with an attack release set pretty quickly, but not the quickest setting. And then the next thing Ichika uses is tube saturation, which will add a bunch of harmonics to the signal. And that makes up pretty much all of his clean tone. I used an EQ after the tube saturation, and that was just to make the tone overall a little bit brighter. And then for ambience, I generally will use a room modeler and a reverb, and then just EQ both of them so that I can get a lot of the ambience, and then just reduce anything that becomes overbearing or distracting. So for this part 2, I'm going to show what I use to get the tone in my Ichika Sunny cover, which is a slightly crunchy tone, and I used a Marshall Plexi Classic amp simulation. But I'll also show a free alternative that you can use that works just as good as this. And really any Marshall style amp should work well for getting this tone. The most important setting is to roll off the gain or drive to almost as low as it'll go. There's a bunch of other guitarists that use something like a Marshall and roll the gain back almost all the way to get a nice light crunch tone. Corey Wong does this as well, and Mateus Asado. But for Ichika's playing style, I also used an EQ and compressor before going into the amp, which will help with the tapping parts becoming more consistent with the strumming parts. And then after the amp, I used another EQ to pull out more of the harsher mid-range. And here's that same signal chain, but I'm going to use Guitar Rig 5 with just the default amp that it comes with. You can download Guitar Rig 5 for free on Native Instruments website. I'll link to that down below. So now I'll just disable my Marshall plugin and turn on Guitar Rig 5 instead and try to dial up some similar settings.